Okay, so weapons dropped of August of 2025, last year, which that's crazy. But 93% on Rotten Tomatoes, 270 million at the box office, and Amy Madigan wins her first Oscar after 40 years. And immediately after this movie came out, everyone started posting their interpretations. And I mean, I had one too. An early draft of this video, I was convinced that Gladys actually represented the No Child Left Behind Act. I mean, think about it. You had the kids reduced to data points, the teachers were scapegoated, institutions were feeding on children while claiming to protect them. This was my bulletproof evidence. Josh Brolin plays the grieving father, and Josh Brolin played George H.W. Bush in W. So, I mean, connect the dots, people. The truth is out there. Education policy metaphor has been confirmed. However, I was dead wrong, and the reason I was wrong is more interesting than any interpretation of the movie that one can muster. So, after I started working on this script, Film Theory dropped a video arguing that Gladys is a fairy, like actual Fey mythology. The power of names, bargains with personal objects, the old magic rules, and I mean, that reading tracks too. Meanwhile, political Twitter found the floating AR-15 and it had the number 217 on it. It was the exact number of votes that passed the 2022 assault weapons ban in the House. Parent committees see generational trauma. Somebody else mapped the whole thing to the Pied Piper of Hamelin. But nobody's arguing. The gun control crowd aren't debating the fairy people. The parents aren't engaging with folklore scholars. These are parallel conversations, separate bubbles, and each are convinced that they've decoded the film. And yes, I know this is how media interpretation works, but I think there's a more interesting pattern at play here. As someone who has spent my entire life standing between different communities, I don't really talk to each other, at least not as much back then as compared to now. And then looking into this, I was looking at Zach Cregger's interviews and it just got weirder. So, for those who don't know, Krieger started writing weapons in 2021. He was processing his friend Trevor Moore's death. Trevor, from the comedy troupe Whitest Kids You Know, died August 7th around 2:30 a.m. from a fall. The kids and weapons vanished at 2:17 a.m. The film released August 8th, the anniversary weekend. There are 7 hot dogs in one scene, which is a reference to a sketch from the Whitest Kids You Know that was written by Trevor, which was called Hot Dog Timmy. In an interview with Rolling Stone, Krieger said that writing Barbarian was like a kid coloring with crayons, but writing weapons was like me vomiting. He was just processing overwhelming grief, except as he kept writing, it became about something else. The Alex chapter, the kid forced to take care for his catatonic parents, Krieger told Rolling Stone, like, this is straight up. I lived that chapter as a kid. It's very much what it's like to have a parent who's an addict, and the kid has become the caretaker. Krieger is an alcoholic with 10 years of sobriety. His father died of cirrhosis. Josh Brolin in the same interview. We're both sober. He talked about his alcoholic dad. I talked about my alcoholic mom. He found those spots in me. So now it's about addiction. It's about childhood trauma. It's about loss of adolescence. And then in an interview with The Playlist, Krieger says, I wasn't trying to comment on collective societal tragedies. I was purely writing from a personal place. I wasn't thinking, oh, America at all. I was thinking, oh, Zach. Krieger himself is standing in multiple places at once. Started as grief, evolved into addiction trauma. He insists that it's personal. But viewers keep finding politics, fairy tales, biblical references, things that he says he never put there. Krieger gave Amy Madigan, who plays Gladys, 2 completely different backstories to choose from. Option 1, Gladys was a regular person whose life-threatening illnesses pushed her to seek witchcraft as a cure. Option number 2, Gladys is not human at all, a dark supernatural entity mimicking a person like Pennywise. Madigan chose one of those entries and Krieger never revealed which. 2 competing origin stories for his own villain. And then there's the floating gun. About 20 minutes into Weapons, Josh Brolin's character Archer has a dream. He's searching for his missing son. He follows a trail to a house, looks up, and there's a massive AR-15 floating in the sky with 217 glowing on the barrel like a digital alarm clock. This single frame is probably one of the most talked about images for the entire film. When Variety asked Krieger what it means, here's what he said, and I'm going to recite the quote in full because I think it's really important to the thesis that I'm presenting here. It's a very important moment for me in this movie, and let me be frank with you. I think what I love about it so much is that I don't understand it. I have a few different ideas of what it might be there for, but I don't have the right answer. I like the idea that everyone's probably going to have their own interaction or relationship with that scene. Whether they don't give a shit about it, or it's boring, or whether they think it's some sort of political statement, or whatever they think is just cool. Or whether they think it's just cool. I don't really care. It's not up to me. I just like that it's there. I mean, you have a director saying, I don't understand my most iconic image, while also saying it's very important to me. He means it. He's describing something that is very real about how meaning works, especially in art. So, in doing my research, I found a 1973 sociology paper that I think explains everything that is happening here. So in 1973, sociologist Mark Granovetter published a paper called The Strength of Weak Ties. It's now one of the most cited papers in the history of social science, over 78,000 citations. His big finding was honestly pretty counterintuitive. Your close friends are actually terrible sources of new information. So you all know the same stuff, read the same things, run in the same circles, and the breakthroughs, the stuff that actually changes your life, they come from people that you barely know. Acquaintances, loose connections, what Granovetter called weak ties. His original study was about jobs. He found that more people were far more likely to find employment through someone they barely knew than through their best friend. Because your best friend swims in the same pool of information as you do. It's the person you met once at a conference, or your cousin's coworker, or your neighbor's friend. Those are the bridges to worlds you'd never reach on their own. In 2022, Stanford, MIT, and Harvard tested this at scale. 20 million LinkedIn users over 5 years. They confirmed it, but with a twist. It's not the absolute weakest ties that are the most powerful, it's the moderately weak ones. There's an inverted U shape. Some overlap is necessary. You need enough common ground to translate the information, but enough distance that the information is actually new. The pattern explains everything happening with the movie Weapons. Horror scholars analyzing the film pull from cinema history. Kubrick references, Room 217 and The Shining, very much visual language of the horror genre. That is their world. Political commentators found the 217 vote assault weapons ban because that's what they're tracking. They're tracking legislative history. That is their world. And parent communities are cataloging every danger in the film: addiction, abuse, neglect, because these are threats that we're constantly assessing for our kids. That is very much our world. Everyone is interpreting the same scenes from completely separate positions, and nobody realizes that other conversations are happening at the same time. And at the end of the day, it's like I keep saying, you're not wrong. However, you're just standing somewhere else. And Krieger built this into the film's actual structure, not as a metaphor, but as plot mechanics. He structured Weapons into 6 different chapters: Justine, Archer, Paul, James, Marcus, and Alex, each following a separate character's perspective on the same events. He cited Magnolia as his North Star, but also Jennifer Egan's Pulitzer Prize-winning novel, A Visit from the Goon Squad. That name aged terribly. A book that jumps between loosely connected characters across decades, where the connections between chapters matter more than any single story. A weak tie structure. Krieger chose it instinctively. So, look at what he built and watch the bridges as they're forming. We have James, a homeless addict and a petty burglar. He breaks into Alex's house and finds 17 children in the basement. He has the answer to the entire mystery. He's also nobody. He has no institutional connections, no credibility, no way to move that information to anyone who can act on it. Earlier in the film, James is outside a liquor store asking customers for cash. One of those customers is Justine Gandy, Alex's teacher, the person investigating why her entire class vanished. And then there is Paul Morgan, a patrol cop, Justine's ex-boyfriend and affair partner, and the person who arrests James after a botched break-in. Paul is connected to both of them now. He's Justine's weak tie to law enforcement, and he's James' only point of contact with someone who has the authority. Paul is the bridge that could solve everything. James tells Paul about the children, Paul takes him to the house, and Gladys absorbs them both. Paul walks into that house and comes out bewitched, controlled, violent, lost. The one bridge between James' discovery and Justine's investigation doesn't just fail, it gets consumed. The information never flows. It's not a metaphor for how weak ties break down. That's a scene that you watch happen basically in real time. Meanwhile, Archer is running a completely separate investigation, pulling smart doorbell footage, mapping the paths the children took when they ran. He figures out on his own that every path converges on one house. He and Justine arrive at Alex's house together from completely different directions, carrying completely different pieces of the map. Together, they are able to put it together and actually see everything in its entirety, but apart they couldn't. And then there's Gladys. She is the weak tie weaponized, pun fully intended. A distant aunt, half forgotten, a very loose family connection that nobody scrutinizes. She shows up claiming to be recovering from an illness. A close family member would have been questioned. A stranger would have been blocked at the door. But a vaguely remembered aunt? She walks right in. That's the Granovetter sweet spot, moderately weak, except she's using it to infiltrate rather than inform. There's even a line from the father that says, she's family. We gotta help her. That is her exploiting that weak tie. She forces him, under the threat of his parents' lives, to steal one personal object from every classmate, a possession from each kid. That's her mechanism of control. She doesn't need direct access to 17 families. She just needs one weak tie into one classroom, and the whole network is compromised. So we're going from distant aunt to classroom connections, which connects to an entire town. That is one bridge making 4 hops to end up with 17 missing children. It's like a really messed up 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, you know what I mean? And Krieger built a movie where the same structural force, weak ties, carries truth between Archer and Justine, and it carries destruction through Gladys. The bridge that saves and the bridge that devours are part of the same infrastructure. You get it? Bridge, infrastructure? Yeah, my thesis is starting to eat itself, but let's start wrapping up. So, you watched Paul get consumed trying to carry information across a gap, and you watch Archer and Justine succeed because they built enough different bridges across enough different areas. You watch Gladys exploit the same infrastructure to compromise an entire town. 3 versions of the same mechanism, one that failed, one that worked, and one that was weaponized. And this is a lot about how I think about parenting now too. Like, my kids are in worlds that I literally could not access if I wanted to. And I'm talking just like very niche anime, TV shows, web shows, microcosm gaming communities, platforms that I have no interest being anywhere near. But at the same time, I am a de facto millennial. I mean, our generation invented referential pop culture. I will have no debate about it. But go ahead and leave your debating comments down below, but I am correct. I know what it looks like when a community builds its own language. My kids are weak ties to networks that I can't reach, and I'm a weak tie for them. The information that matters most flows through that bridge, not because we're being generous about each other's perspectives, but because we're carrying knowledge that the other person couldn't generate alone. But bridges are still infrastructure. They don't care about intent. The same force that connected Archer and Justine is the same force that let Gladys walk through that door. So, to conclude, when Krieger says, "I don't understand it," about his own most powerful image, he's not being coy. He's describing what happens when art becomes infrastructure. His grief created a node. Viewers from completely disconnected worlds plugged into it and carried away information that he never put there. The work stopped being his the moment it became a bridge, the same way Paul stopped being a cop the moment he walked into that house. That's weak ties. It's not a lesson in empathy. It's a map of how information actually moves. How a burglar and a teacher can stand 3 feet apart and miss the answer that they're both looking for. It's how a forgotten aunt can walk through a door nobody thought to lock. So what is or was your interpretation of the movie Weapons? My whole thing isn't really just saying that they're all right or they're all wrong. I just think that in regards to my personal interpretation of this movie, it all boils down really to this one sociological theme. But tell me what you think. Tell me why, and overall, just let me know what you think about the video and what world are you bringing to this film when you watch it. Thank you for watching. Stay safe. Stay away from elementary age children. That's just good general advice, and I'll see you in the next one. Maybe now you'll understand I was making Ryan Hollinger references now. So, however, bye.